Fighting for freedom, liberty, and the restoration of the Constitution. The Patrick Riggins Show. Call in now at 865-243-8255. That's 243-TALK. And now your host, Patrick Riggins.
This is Patrick Riggins with the, can you guess, the Patrick Riggins Show.
I couldn't guess.
You'd never guess that. You think if you heard this show and you'd heard it before, you would think the name of this show is the greatest radio show that's ever been on the radio. But it's not. It's the Patrick Riggins Show. But that's synonymous with that. So, not to stroke my ego on the air. Yeah, right. All right. What I want to get into this segment, which, if you've listened to this show, we've kind of been chronicling the ongoing storyline of the Republicans of why we lost, or why they lost, actually. And it's just funny to watch. The latest reason for the Republican defeat, they weren't courting enough of the Hispanic vote. Now, it's not being on the correct side of gay marriage and gay rights, or as some prominent Republican advisors would say. You know, I think these guys and gals work to come up with these reasons in order to sell the Republican Party more of their advisory services. See, here's the problem, and guess what? I'm the only one that can help you fix it. I think these consultants don't really care the reason why they lost, as long as they can continue to sell that party on their services. And doing that requires they come up with a different angle on the election every week, at least until the next election cycle gets into full swing. So the angle this last week has mostly been that the Republicans are not working to implement gay marriage and gay rights across this nation. This is the problem with this party. It is like the oddball kid in school trying to get everyone to like him. He keeps hoping if he does this one more stunt, or lets the football jocks put his head in the toilet one more time, he'll gain the favor of everyone. He'll be accepted. The only problem is he'll never be accepted by doing that sort of thing, by trying to please everyone. I cannot figure out why the Republicans insist on being so spineless, on trying to be everybody's buddy. When you do that, eventually you lose even the few friends you used to have, because everyone, even them, have lost all respect for you. This is the problem for the Republicans. They should be paying me $500 an hour to tell them that instead of some overpriced consultant. But that'll never happen, because they don't really want to hear the truth, that kind of hard truth that just grates on them.
You can't handle the truth.
Exactly. They can't handle the truth. They want to try and drag the party to them, drag the people into accepting their views of the country, which are not that far removed from the Democrats. Therein lies their problem. This is why they work so hard to isolate and remove the Ron Paul element from the party, that libertarian element with which I believe a majority of Americans would agree if presented fairly and without bias. Now, the Republicans don't believe in it. They don't believe in freedom and liberty for the individual. Oh, they believe in it for themselves. That's why they pass laws and then exempt Congress and select agencies from having to follow them. In fact, real quick here, let me see if I've got it here. I played this clip from Ron Paul last week, and I'll play it again this week so you can hear something from him real quick, just on that very thing.
Everyone claims support for freedom, but too often it's for one's own freedoms and not for others. Too many believe that there must be limits on freedom. They argue that freedom must be directed and managed to achieve fairness and equality, thus making it acceptable to curtail through force certain liberties. Some decide what and whose freedoms to be limited. These are the politicians whose goal in life is power.
Exactly. Also have another quote from him coming up real quick here. This is his thoughts on gay marriage. I've played this on the show before, but for you new listeners, you probably haven't heard this, but this is what Dr. Paul had to say about that at one of the debates.
I think the government should just be out of it. I think it should be done by the church or private contract, and we shouldn't have this argument. Who's married and who isn't married? I have my standards, but I shouldn't have to impose my standards on others. Others have standards, and they have no right to impose their marriage standards on me. And I just don't like it. But if we want to have something to say about marriage, it should be at the state level and not at the federal government. Just get the government out of it. It's one area where it's totally unnecessary, and they've caused more trouble than necessary.
There you go. Government should not be in marriage, period. I don't know how much more plain you can put that. The only problem is Republican consultants don't believe that message will fly, so they try and modify it for consumption by the electorate. Again, trying to bend to what they think is the will of the masses. But by the time the masses hear the message, it is so muddled that no one can really make heads or tails of it. That's why this radio show is different and becoming more popular all the time, because it is consistent. I consistently stick to the principles of liberty, even if it leads to people disagreeing with me on some things. I believe if we have to pick between leaning towards more liberty or leaning towards more tyranny, we simply must lean towards more liberty. It is the only way our country can survive long term. It is the only way to demonstrate respect for adults making decisions for themselves. Here's where I addressed that just this last week.
One of the biggest problems you are going to have in trying to correct your deficiencies in thinking about freedom and liberty is other people's freedom and liberty. You are going to have to remain vigilant in making sure you're not trying to impose your morals on others through law. Unfortunately, this is one of the big problems. Too many people want to tell others what to do, how to live. One of the biggest steps you can make towards becoming more free is allowing others to be free as well. Allowing other adults to make decisions you see as detrimental in their lives. These decisions may in fact be detrimental, or they may not be. But either way, you have to allow them to make those decisions for themselves. Now, you can offer advice. You can give your opinion. I do it on this show every week. But what you cannot do is impose your advice or opinions. That is where you cross the line. Now, what you may say, Patrick, they don't realize what they are doing, how they're hurting themselves. Hey, I understand that completely. But sometimes people have to trip and fall to learn things. And yes, sometimes people learn lessons too late. They end up killing themselves through their mistakes.
This all goes back to the whole gay marriage, gay rights debate within the Republican Party. It should not be up for debate because government should not be involved. There should be no recognition of marriage by government. Many conservatives, commentators, pundits, politicians, consultants, they all say we need to get back to the way it was. Well, that's the way it was. Back in the olden days, you didn't have to tell the government who you were marrying or get its permission in the form of a marriage license. You just got married. What does it matter to the state who I marry? One argument used is that the IRS gives special consideration and tax status to married couples. Those that are married agree, saying it is unfair to tax them as two people when they are one household. But they are two people. Government should be treating everyone the same. If you're married and argue that you should get special consideration as far as taxes are concerned, then argue others should not because of their societal status, then you're being hypocritical. And that goes against what we talk about on this show. But you may say, well, what about gay rights, Patrick? You didn't address that. Well, glad you brought that up. How can you have gay rights? How can someone who is homosexual have rights that the rest of us don't have? That's right, they cannot. Either we all have the same rights or we don't. We cannot legislate specific rights for one group or another, because that is when we start defining so-called rights outside the natural human rights we are all granted by the fact we are human. When the government starts favoring one group of citizens over another, then we start running into the trouble we see now. Conservative commentators on radio and television scream about their freedom. Again, as I've said on this show before, they don't want true freedom. They want freedom their way. They yell about freedom and then complain about gay rights or gay marriage. There are no gay rights. There shouldn't be. There are only individual rights. Rights don't care if you're gay, black, white, Hispanic. This is what this is what the Republicans are missing. The Republican strategists sit around and try to figure out how to win certain groups of people. What they're saying is, how can we buy votes from this or that group? That's what trying to appeal to women voters or Hispanic voters or gay voters, that's what that means. The message they should be reaching out with is freedom and liberty. That's it. It appeals across the broad spectrum of voters because deep down, that's what everybody, or most everybody, wants in this country. You wonder why the Republicans so blatantly squelched Ron Paul's message at the National Convention, why they wouldn't even allow his son Rand to mention his dad's name from the stage. They are terrified of the thought of people wanting their own freedom. They don't think we are adults. They think we're children who have to be told what to do, when to do, and how to do it. If the Republicans want to consistently win elections with overwhelming majorities, they're going to have to kick out the old establishment fossils in the leadership and embrace the freedom and liberty-loving side of this party. Or their party, actually. Anyway, we're up on the bottom of the hour, and we'll go to a break real quick, and we'll pick up with a little more of this. I have a couple more things I want to say about it. And, yeah, Tori's picking the outro music. So, anyway, this is Patrick Riggins. We're at the bottom of the hour. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about perseverance, and we'll work, like I said, Jack Sparrow into the mix somehow. This is Patrick Riggins with the Patrick Riggins Show. We'll be back in a couple of minutes.